Hello, John.
Hello, Oliver.
And today we're going to talk about the Apple ruling. 4 years ago we done a video on the Apple ruling and you were against Ireland handing over, I think it was 13 billion. And you're one of the few people who actually thought that at the time. Now you've been proven right, and today we're going to give you your day of glory.
Well, thank you very much. And as a matter of fact, I was emphatic about it, and I could have spoken more about the reason why it should never have been, Ireland could never support such a thing. I have to say the media, as usual, was jumping on this bandwagon and looking at what way the 13.5 billion could be spent. They never questioned the decision of this EU Commission competition minister, Vestager, a Danish minister who's actually, they are not in the, they don't have the euro as the currency, to have a thing called a krona. Krona, whatever it is, but it ain't the euro. But in any event, she had instigated a case against Ireland and Apple, and the narrative was that our tax laws were lax and we weren't collecting the tax that was due from the like of Apple and perhaps others. So it was a criticism of this country that would have to be resisted. 4 years ago I resisted it as best I could at the time, but turned out to be right without understanding the legal ramifications of what they were doing. So when the EU speaks, it's like as if the Almighty speaks, that they must be right and there must be something, as they used to say, rotten in the state of Denmark. Funny enough, that's where she's from.
Hamlet.
Correct,
yes.
Hamlet. So it's not for nothing that maybe Mr. Shakespeare, William, or rather Sir William,
he foreseen it all.
He must have foreseen it. I wonder, did he have some insight into what was going to happen? Anyway, this country has suffered grievously down the years, and funny enough, when we joined the EU, we lost all our food companies for this free competition. Household names, so much so that we lost the sugar factory. So we paid a high price for this membership of the EU, and I think leaders at the time should have questioned that scenario. But the benefits were supposed to outweigh the like of that. Well, it didn't. And here we are now, because of all the jobs that was lost, the Industrial Development Authority and the Department of the various departments in this country that were well run as far as I'm concerned at that time, decided that they had to try and attract industry to the country, particularly American companies. This is why I criticise the media for having this anti-American business, when it's the only country that invests in this country to any extent. Now, so here we are in the EU, but what does happen? What happens? Why did this Vestager bring this case? They brought it because there had been an action by a senator, as he was at the time, John McCain, who was a presidential candidate and a Democratic senator, who brought a case in their, had hearings in the US to do with tax, and regarded this as a tax haven and spoke very disparaging about the country. Now, from that day on, because I worked in this country in business and a fair idea about it, I disliked that man McCain a little squid that, lucky enough, was never president. He's a Republican. As a matter of fact, he was anti-Trump. He's died there now and made out himself to be a hero. But he was an enemy of this country, and so was this other Democrat. And as a result of that, the government here was expecting something from the EU, especially this Vestager, because they're not in the EU for nothing. They know who's on your side and who isn't, and this Vestager wasn't. She was a descendant of the Danes, the Vikings that attacked this country and destroyed the monasteries and all the rest of it. So, and to have a record. Don't forget they were a colonial country as well. So.
Where did you read she's a descendant of that?
Eh?
Where did you read that she's a descendant?
The Danes were the original Vikings.
Okay.
So
Vestager is a Viking.
No,
and she must be fought.
well, I just merely make the point that their record leaves a bit to be desired from the point of view of this country, because they raided this country, and I think there was a march there where they were trying to keep Viking artefacts in Dublin in Wood Quay.
Yeah.
And at the time, John Malone, I wasn't in any party. Oh, I was in Fianna Fáil at the time, but they were that guy. But anyways, they were trying to keep these Viking things, which I was completely against, and I was wondering what was wrong with them.
So you would suggest maybe that maybe John Malone would go down, collect the relics, hand them to Vestager, and say, "Get out of Ireland."
Well, I certainly wouldn't be trying to keep a record of what they did. Apparently, they built some kind of wooden structures, and come across them when they were building for the council, building these offices in Wood Quay. They're fine offices, and then they're having a look at the Liffey. I suppose they like looking at the water.
Well, funny enough, now you should mention the Liffey, right? Because in St. Catherine's Park, okay, which is beside Lixil, there's a little monastery dating back to 1200. And apparently, I was talking to a local, and he told me that in around, I think it was around the year 1200 or 1300, that the Vikings came up by the Liffey, and they slaughtered all the monks.
Well, there
they
you are.
invaded, yes, that's what it is.
That's a story now I didn't know. I know that they sacked monasteries, but I didn't know to come up. So you see how dangerous they were.
Yeah.
They weren't, and they would have kidnapped people, kidnapped Irish people, and had them as slaves over in their miserable country. Because don't forget, they conquered other countries. So they have a record that leaves a lot to be desired. I wouldn't be trying to keep any memory of what they might have stayed here and what they did. I
think as well, John, that people have a short memory, and we've done a video there a while back on the 1965 Free Trade Act, which was a prerequisite for Ireland joining the EEC in 1973.
Correct.
And the EEC at the time agreed that Ireland would have a tax rate of 10%. They said if you want to join the EEC, you can't have a corporation tax of 0, you have to have it at 10. And in return, the Irish people, the Irish government, opened up our markets to the UK mostly and to the rest of Europe, and as a result we lost all our manufacturing. We lost our shoe factories, all our factories are gone, right?
Well, marvellous shoes, by the way, you couldn't ask for better. Lovely shoe factory in Ballinasloe, all these towns.
Yeah, so Vestager, I think, needs to be reminded of those things, you know, that we gave so much to other countries in terms of manufacturing, right? That we lost our own manufacturing, we lost all our everything that we produce now is imported from the European Union.
And no use, they're not quarter as good as what we have.
Yes.
What we produced here by way of food and by way of the shoes and all the rest of it that we had and the food, it was second to none.
Yeah.
The quality was excellent. I could go on about that and talk about that maybe at length, because there was other ways it was destroyed by vested interests. Giving the impression that they were in favour of it and at the same time destroying it. So our food industry is nothing like what it was at that time, and I don't know how anybody could start a food business and expect to have their products listed in the supermarkets here, because there's monopolies. Anyway, about Vestager, I think even if she was told about these things, did you ever hear the phrase, in one ear and out the other?
I have heard it many times.
Correct. So you might be wasting your breath, because the Irish were fairly good, but they anticipated this and they decided to join with Apple in opposing it. Now, they didn't have the support of the media in this country, by the way, or anything like it, or the support of governments in the EU. They'd like to just go along and sort of make out that we were giving backhanders and tax advantages to all these companies that were providing valuable jobs, forgetting that when Apple started here over 20 years ago, they weren't making much money at all. Yeah, but because of our excellent industrial development authority and the government of the day, they did invest here down in Cork, and in places where there might have been a scarcity of jobs. Don't forget there was great jobs in Cork one time. Ford manufactured cars there, and Sir Patrick Hennessy became the head man in Britain at the time, and Dunlops had and gave great employment. But all them jobs had to go, I think, when we joined the EU.
Yeah.
Or the pre-trade, whatever it was anyways, there was great manufacturing jobs lost in these industries. And we could assemble these cars here. And there was a lot of employment, good employment, permanent employment, but all lost when we joined the EU. But the media have been so shallow and been so not remember what happened yesterday kind of thing, they never refer to these things. But anybody that grew up as I did in them times knows what we lost. And now here we've gained some of these jobs for people that were well qualified, happened to go to university to be trained, given jobs. So they were most welcome. And what do we find? This Vestager threatened our industrial strategy in this country, being an island nation, to try and attract industry. I mean, what was wrong with, you see, this is the mindset of the EU. They have no respect for a country like Ireland that's on the periphery. We have to send everything by sea or by air. Mm-hmm. We haven't got a land mass like what they have in where she's from, Denmark. They have a land mass in Europe, advantages far more than what we have. We haven't got that. So everything has to go, and that adds to the cost, I would presume. And when it goes abroad, then it has to go, we have to send lorries all over Europe. And making it difficult for them at times, especially if they go through Britain. They were being checked for every sort of thing going through there, like to try and find fault with them. So, like, these are all the difficulties that our exporters have to face. Now, so when Vestager was coming away with this, there was going to be other ones hit, not just Apple. This was the start. Now she's after getting, we won the case. The Irish government and Apple won the case in the second highest court in Europe. And I think we've been awarded 80 million because that's what it cost for to mount this defence. And if we hadn't supported Apple, we wouldn't gain any kudos. Now we've gained a lot of kudos. I don't think the media in this country is capable of analysing the victory that we've had, that this government, that the country has had. I'm not saying this government, I don't know what to stand for, but we say a proper government with a democratic, government. But they would be delighted with this, and it would be a cause for celebration, which it is, because it means our industrial policy is vindicated, and we're not this banana republic that was being portrayed by the media, and especially in Europe, and getting this abuse. Apparently Vestager is examining the ruling. Now, if she and the EU embarks on another case to the very highest court, I think it would be time for Ireland to consider their position in that body, because we're already paying, we have to pay an additional 3 billion or more to be in it, more than what we're getting out of it. And but it's the way that we've been treated, and this is a vindication. But do you think you're going to have apologies from Vestager and that EU for inflicting such a problem in this country and putting them through the ringer?
But the thing about it is, I mean, without the multinationals, because of what's happened now with the EU, we opened up our market to theirs, and we came out badly. The farmers came out initially. The farmers came out very well in the 1965 Free Trade Act, but the manufacturing is gone. So we're a country now that if the multinationals were to leave, we're in trouble, because we do get quite a lot of money from the multinationals in terms of corporation tax. So if they did pull out, we very little. So it should be really seen as one of Ireland's natural resources to have our multinationals here and the low tax, I think.
Well, yes, and then the employees pay tax here because they're well paid. And that's another thing, they're well paid, so anyone that's fortunate enough to work in them, I believe the work ethic is kind of hard, but nonetheless the remuneration is good, so it means people can buy houses and that, and then they need tradesmen to do various things, so there's an add-on effect to the local industry, to the local service providers and all the rest of it, so the more jobs you have, the more that happens. So the EU, to my way of thinking, with that case that Vestager, that competition minister or commissioner, with the support of the EU hierarchy embarked on, I think was a very shallow and a wrong decision that they undertook. Now they've been criticised by this court that they had no right to bring the case practically. Now, this article has been written by a former employee of the IDA, and they really had to come together. They all came together to sort of pool their expertise to defeat this, and thank God they had this victory. I'd like to see it celebrated far more than what it is, but the media are so preoccupied with what I call nothing of importance. In other words, this government, and sort of harrying it and reporting whatever they can to destroy it and destroy the country, if you like, in the process. I would like this government, bad and all as it is, at least to succeed for a certain amount of time, to have some stability. What they're doing at the moment with regard to all the business that's closed, and particularly the licensed trade and the business of masks and all the rest of it, I think that they're overdoing that. Precautions, considering that they have been responsible for introducing the killing of innocent babies before they're being born, and also everything else that they've done.
Okay, well, we'll be covering that in the other videos, and so yeah, that was a good insight into Apple. I think you were right 4 years ago, and you're right now, and it was the right decision.
I think so, yeah. But as I say, we have to watch, and we certainly will comment if this Vestager, I thought she was maybe gone. I didn't think that she'd be here that long, and so we have to consider what they might do. I think maybe with Brexit, they might have to sort of rethink what they're at, because we're in a situation that we could leave the EU, I think, and might benefit our food manufacturing. And by the way, we did it before, but to limit the multiples share of the market, but that's a separate issue. But we sort of need to do something to make sure we have industry in this country, and not such sort of what we had years ago, mass immigration.
But you know what? Just as a side note there, because we were talking about Lidl and Aldi before. I think, you know what, with Lidl and Aldi, we're making the same mistake as we made in 1965. So what happened in 1965 was, for the shoemaker went out of business in Ireland because they got cheap shoes from the UK, right? Now what's happening in Ireland is, okay, the little shop, the corner shop now is gone, right? The little shop, the family business, right? And you've Lidl coming in, undercutting them, you see. That's so they go out of business. So it's very similar to what happened to the manufacturing, except now it's happening in the grocery trade also.
Correct. And which is an important industry. We were talking there a minute ago, I mentioned Priest at VG and that Speaker General, and there was a VG supermarket group which I would have supplied. They were operated by wholesalers, and it was an idea to give the customer an idea of value, because they promoted certain products and they tried to keep prices low, and which they did, because manufacturers delivered to wholesalers, which was a good way of doing it, and then the wholesalers supplied the independent stores. Very, very efficient. The supermarkets is not quarter as efficient as what they were before they took over, and before this government. That's the one bad thing that they did, is to allow that monopoly situation, because they've destroyed any potential food manufacturing. You have to have customers, and you have to have an independent a trade as we had. Now we have monopolies in that trade that have 90% of it. That's kind of crazy. It is their share should be limited to 10% max. And then if there's surplus that they have there, then that should be a private individual. So they have competition, proper competition.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you very much, Oliver.